Hey everybody, welcome to Cowboy Criminology. My name is Derek Judd, and of course I am your host, and I am the Cowboy Criminologist. So if you're like me, you've been watching the developments in the case of Jocelyn Nungaray. She's the Houston 12-year-old who was assaulted and murdered by two men. And I, I really wasn't following this case terribly close until I found out the district attorney Kim Ogg was saying that the death penalty didn't apply in this case, and so I haven't watched this. I haven't watched this video, the video of her press conference, but I'm interested to figure out what we're looking at now. Something to remember about Kim Ogg is that she was recently beat in the Democratic election, uh, going into 2024, and she will be replaced by one of two other candidates. Uh, so I'm curious. I'm curious how this whole thing has shaped up. So let's watch this press conference together, and let's see if we can glean any details.
Case of Jocelyn Nungaray and the arrest and charging of Johan Jose Martinez-Rangel and Franklin Pena. Today, was it Pena that was? Franklin Pena was arraigned, his bond set at $10 million. The charge is capital murder of a child between 10 and 15 years old. At this time, the current charge does not carry death penalty eligibility. However, it is important for the public and the press to know that the investigation is ongoing, that forensics and lab work are required in this case, and unlike on television, they can't do it in an hour. So we look forward to the results of the tests that are being run on the evidence in the case. And should those tests produce evidence that would support a charge of sexual assault, or should other evidence be brought forward that supports a charge of kidnapping, both underlying offenses would make this capital murder and these individuals death penalty eligible. Make no mistake, this is a horrific crime. And when we take charges, we do it based on the evidence we have at the moment. We look forward to working with our lab, continuing to work with our investigators, and it's obvious that Jocelyn had a loving family. The support that they've shown will continue because their daughter, like all of our children, was one of our most vulnerable citizens. And we have to protect our most valuable resources, our kids. So our hearts go out to the Nungaray family. I want to bring up at this time Alexis Nungaray, Jocelyn's mother, for a few words to you. If there are questions about the case that we can answer, then our lead prosecutor, Megan Long, will be available to answer it. She is assisted by Elizabeth Lieberman, who is here but in the back. These are the prosecutors who will be handling the case. They'll be back tomorrow for the arraignment of the second defendant, Johan Jose Martinez-Rangel. Alexis?
First and last name spelling? Yes, first name is Megan, M-E-G-A-N. Last name is Long, L-O-N-G.
And Elizabeth Lieberman. And she'll have to tell you where the I's and the E's go after this. All right. Alexis?
I thank everybody for being here to make notice, a national notice for my daughter. She was amazing. I still see her face in the back of my head every day, all day. Keep getting little signs about her throughout the days, and This has been a very, very hard time for me and my family, but the amount of support I've been getting from everybody it's very, it's from the bottom of my heart, so appreciated. I hear her sayings just replaying over and over on in a loop in my brain. Her dorkiness, her quirkiness. She definitely made people laugh. She's I'm always gonna remember those memories because she had such a bright future ahead of her, and I knew she was gonna go very far. And you know, these monsters took that opportunity from her, from our family, of watching her. And I just want people to remember, I know this is a very high profile case, but she was still my firstborn. I was a teen mom. I fought for her at 15. So 27 now, I'm still fighting for her. And just remember that she was a very special little girl that deserves her justice. And I know she's going to make a difference in this world for all children. And now it's my job to make sure it continues to happen. So I just want to say thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Okay, you did great.
Question for you. The judge set a bond at $10 million. This was higher than what the district attorney's office asked for. Were you surprised by this, and what's your reaction to the judge's decision?
Well, my reaction is that I support bonds that are sufficient to hold high-risk defendants in custody while they're charged with violent crimes and awaiting trial. We need faster trials, and that's part of why we created a homicide division and asked the legislature to prioritize murders and capital murders, which they did. So we're supportive of the bond that was set. We'll ask for the same bond for the co-defendant tomorrow. And as soon as our lab results are back, and if they support a death penalty eligible type of capital murder, then we'll come back and ask for no bond.
Can you talk about the death penalty from 10 to 15 years old and how that impacts the district attorney's office when trying these cases, how it isn't eligible for a death penalty for some reason, this age restriction from 10 to 15 years old?
Our laws treat the age of victims differently, and they've changed where they draw the line. Used to be children under 6 if they were murdered. That created an underlying offense that would support death penalty in capital murder. That law was expanded to 10 years old and under, and then further expanded from 10 to 15 if the victim was 10 to 15 years old. Yet death penalty was taken off the table by the legislature, and instead they suggested that life without parole would be the appropriate charge. But age is not the only consideration in this case or any case. The underlying actions of the criminals. This victim was found, bound and without clothing from the waist down in the water, and we just think that there's a good possibility. We hope that there's evidence that remains to be tested.
Is there any indication that the suspects knew Jocelyn, or they lived in the same area, maybe crossed paths at any time?
No.
Do you know why, if that 10 to 15 age range, why, that particular age doesn't warrant the death penalty?
No, you would have to ask the legislators who passed that bill. I think they were expanding law and order, and they wanted the most vulnerable victims to be better protected, but for some reason took death penalty off the table. I don't know why.
Ms. Nungaray mentioned this is a high-profile case. Can you talk about what direction or advice you give your prosecutors if you're handling something this high-profile, or what your expectations are for them when there's this much attention?
So let me take just a minute to brag on the prosecutors that we've carved out to serve in the homicide division of the Harris County DA's office. It's a relatively new position. We've had it for the last 3 years. The idea was to reduce the trauma for victims by putting our most qualified prosecutors on capital murders and hopefully not having to reassign them as often, so that these family members didn't have to go through the trauma of working with new prosecutor after new prosecutor, as can happen here. So, you know, it's a reflection of our intent to better serve crime victims. And the lawyers that are on it are a reflection of our desire to have the best of the best, trying the worst of the worst.
It was determined that a sexual assault happened, it would become death penalty eligible. Does that mean you would prosecute it as such?
It doesn't mean that. We make determinations about whether or not we're going to seek death very carefully. We have a committee. It is not a thumbs up or thumbs down decision by the elected DA like it used to be. I changed that. And the committee looks at the evidence, including evidence presented by the defense, especially if it has to do with mental illness or intellectual disability of any kind. We have to take that into consideration. And so it's a lengthy process to decide what is and is not an appropriate case to seek death on. We've been very circumspect with it in this office, but we have sought it. And we always take the wishes of the family and the feelings that they have about punishment into consideration. They have to rely on us for the ultimate decision. I have to rely on the prosecutors for the ultimate decisions, and that's why it's so important to have dedicated people in these positions, and I can assure you that Megan and Elizabeth are dedicated.
Can you speak about the mechanics of having someone on an ice hold while a state case is being prosecuted?
You know, I can't speak to the ankle monitor that this fellow that Franklin Pena was wearing. Is that right? I can't speak to ICE putting ankle monitors on folks and releasing them. Our immigration system is broken, and if there was ever a case that reflected that, it's this one.
So you're not able to confirm if one of them put off their ankle monitors after she died?
I can't confirm it.
Well, we weren't able to have audio in the courtroom, so you were successful in proving that he was a flight risk to the community. Can you talk a little bit about that, the fact that he did have an ankle monitor on during the time and why he is a flight risk to the community? I think it was also mentioned they were talking about getting money to basically be able to flee. Just talk a little bit about how you were able to have success in being this flight risk.
Correct. So one of the big factors for us is connections to Harris County. Have they been here for a long time? Do they have family? Do they have a job here? What sort of ties would keep them here and ensure that they would show up one day for trial? Franklin Pena, our understanding, got here in mid-May, so he doesn't have those connections to the community. And so for us, that makes him a flight risk. Additionally, he was talking to his boss who works in construction and asking for money because of what they did to get out of town. So that was an important factor for us to highlight to the judge to show that should he get out, we can't ensure that he would come back and face his day in court for what he did to Jocelyn.
That was a local construction company?
Yes.
Did he tell his boss what he allegedly did?
There's an understanding that something went wrong, someone got hurt, and someone was killed. But as far as any more details on exactly what he said, no.
Did the boss notify police?
Yes, the boss came forward and spoke to the police.
Is that how they ultimately found out where they were?
That is one of the ways that the police were able to determine where they were and who the suspects were.
We just did a story last week at Judge Josh Hill's courtroom about it's taking 4.5 years. His courtroom in particular has an enormous backlog. How are you going to ensure that this family can have a fast process and their loved one, they could get justice and not take years to go through this court system, specifically his courtroom? We do see a backlog.
For us, it's really important to, as soon as the case comes in, to start working, to get essentially our boots on the ground. I come from a fantastic division where myself and all of the homicide divisions, investigators from our office, were out there ourselves interviewing possible witnesses, trying to find everything we can. So a big part of it for us is getting our process started quickly, getting the evidence in our hands, and then evaluating the case. Additionally, it's just getting the testing done in a timely manner really helps us move cases along and get justice for Jocelyn sooner.
Let me answer that question too. It's very important that the public know that judges control the schedules. Judges tell trial lawyers what day we're going to trial. Judges decide if continuances will be granted. Judges decide if we've completed all of our discovery obligations. So we rely upon the courts for scheduling, and that's why I've suggested that we need faster trials, and that's why we sought that law change, why we created this division, and why these prosecutors, these are the prosecutors that want to go to trial. These are the prosecutors who object to the defense continuances. So we've got a lot of hard hitters and heavy hitters in homicide with a directive from me, John Wayne, to go try these cases now.
So, actually, not the worst press conference I've ever seen from a Democratic district attorney. A lot of concerns in that. First and foremost, let's talk about the family that's torn apart by this whole thing. Okay, there's a family that's grieving the loss of a child that was just starting to live. You know. Scrolling through, you may have caught me. I was scrolling through some of the comments on that video, and some of them were wanting to know, why is there bond on a capital murder charge? It doesn't happen often, and usually if it does, it's an exorbitant amount. It's a cash-only bond. I think given the nature that there are two offenders, there should have been no bond. And there seems to be some discrepancy about whether or not one of these killers was wearing an ankle monitor put on them by immigration and customs enforcement officers. How do you is that securing the borders? Is that how we're vetting people coming into the country? Is that the bar to clear asylum? I know there's a lot of people, shut down the borders, and I live in Texas, and most people in Texas agree with shutting down the borders, except we want to do it to the north, to the east, to the west, and to the south. That's just kind of how we roll down here. But if you have that stance, a lot of times people want to say you're anti-immigration. And it's not about being anti-immigration, it's about being anti-illegal immigration. It's about being careful about knowing who's coming into the country, knowing what their background is, knowing what their history is. And I feel bad that some legitimate asylum seekers get caught up in that bureaucratic red tape. It's unfortunate. And unfortunately, I don't know a better way to get around it, but just allowing people to come in and the processing the processing to get people into this country is just unreal. So I don't understand how traveling on a passport, it is one of the most inconvenient things to do to come back into your home country when people can seem to come into the country with no identification, with nothing, and they're able to work, they're able to get an apartment. Now, the office or the construction boss, who one of the killers told, hey, I need to get some money together, I need to get out of town, whatever, and he blew the whistle, that's great. And that's appreciated. But but I guess the question is, it's been asked several times, so I might as well ask it too. Why did you hire somebody without any credentials? On a civil side, the Nungaray family could turn around and sue the federal government, could sue Immigration and Customs Enforcement, could sue the construction company, could sue the apartment management company that rented out the apartment to these guys, and that's just on the civil end. Okay, on the criminal end, I understand. I understand what Kim Og was trying to say, and I don't disagree with her, except at one part. And I think if you followed my channel for any time at all, you probably know where I'm heading pretty quick. But she was saying at the time of the arraignment, there wasn't enough information to support a death penalty, seeking the death penalty. And as she explained everything so far, as she went on to explain, you probably saw me nodding. Okay, yeah, I can see where she's coming with that. Problem. She's 12 years old. These were two grown men. You have an issue with consent. So regardless of how she ended up with these individuals, if she was found naked and she was found bound and you could prove that she was strangled, you've pretty much made your death penalty case. Okay? What possible reason could two grown men have to be with a child, a 12-year-old girl, and have her bound and naked? Really? Now, I can understand the wisdom in waiting until the forensics come back to confirm what many of us already suspect we know. And the odds of it coming back with anything different are, well, look, let me put it to you this way. It is more likely that you will wake up tomorrow and the sun will rise in the west and set in the east than the forensics not proving rape. Now, obviously, there's some issues there where they're not ready to say that sexual assault happened, or they can't prove sexual assault happened at this time. Whatever the case is, the binding of a 12-year-old girl by two men, one of whom says he's remorseful about what happened. I would hope you are. Doesn't change anything, but I'd hope you are. There's really no other explanation for it. She was a victim of opportunity. As far as kidnapping, legal age of consent in the state of Texas is 17 years old. So, being that she was 12 years old, as soon as she was bound, and I want you to think about this, in order to bind her, remember, she was found with no clothes on. In order to do that, they would have to have committed kidnapping, unlawful restraint, and you cannot tell me that this 12-year-old girl thought that this was some kind of game. All right. I understand wanting to get proof to confirm the charges and meet the elements of the case. Okay, I'm with you there. But to sit there and say, no, we're not going to, well, she didn't say no, but she didn't say yes either, in saying that she was going to ask for the death penalty. Okay, Texas is a death penalty state. This is a death penalty eligible crime based on everything we know. You want to wait for confirmation of that? But the correct answer to that question should have been absolutely. If we can determine that the death penalty is appropriate, we will seek the death penalty. We need to send a message to criminals, regardless of where they come from. Regardless of where they come from, if you come and you commit this type of crime in our country, this is what's going to happen. And a lot of people sit there and say, well, you know what, the Eighth Amendment says no cruel and unusual punishment. Okay. Can you tell me of a single known execution method that is more cruel and unusual and inhumane than stripping a 12-year-old girl, binding her, strangling her, and leaving her in a creek? I didn't think so. Okay. The fact of the matter is, I understand people's objections to the death penalty, but we have it for a reason. And we have it to send a message that when crimes like this are committed, they are going to be met with a level of violence that will ensure that you are never able to do that again. All right. Some people might argue, well, it's not going to bring Jocelyn back. No, it's absolutely not. And it's going to be expensive to prosecute. Absolutely is. And it's going to be expensive to keep those two men alive on death row while they go through appeals. You're absolutely right. So let's sit here and say $30,000 to prosecute, go through appeals, and feed and clothe these two offenders for the next 20 years. Okay. Are you telling me, in your philosophical argument that has no basis on reality or the law, that $25 million is better spent in a more economical way, where we just feed, house, and clothe these inmates for the rest of their lives? I would put it to you this way. Since we've abandoned reality, and this is a purely intellectual exercise, let me flex some intellect on you. Do you think if Jocelyn's family had $25 million, they wouldn't hesitate to give every penny of that up so they could have their daughter back? So anyway, y'all, that's my take on the horrific Jocelyn Nungaray case that's developing out of the Houston area. Y'all know where your kids are. Keep tabs on them. Keep an eye on them. You know what? Preteens, teenagers, they're going to accuse you of controlling them, of wanting to ruin their lives, of not wanting them to have any fun, not letting them have any experiences. Well, you know what? You have your whole life to make bad decisions, and that's what your 21st birthday is for. But up till then, and even after, that individual is always going to be a child to their parents. And if their parents love them, care for them, they're always going to want them to make good decisions, and they're always going to want them to be safe, and they're always going to want to know they're safe. So, y'all, take care of your family, take care of your friends, take care of your neighbors. I'm Derek Judd with Cowboy Criminology. Y'all take care. Talk to you next time.